All right, so we're now moving on to the next section of this unit, and that's going to be section 6D, and we're going to be focusing on quadrilaterals. All right, so first we're going to learn, well, what are quadrilaterals, and after we learn about what quadrilaterals are, we're going to learn how to classify different kinds of quadrilaterals. All right, so there's some special quadrilaterals that we're going to learn about, and we're going to have to be able to say whether it's going to be a rhombus, a square, so we're going to be able to say exactly what type of quadrilateral it is. And then after that, you will then learn how to solve for missing measurements of angles within a quadrilateral. So just like we did with a triangle, but now we're going to extend that to a quadrilateral. All right, so first let's talk about what quadrilaterals are, and then move on to the special kinds. So first off, what is a quadrilateral? Well, quadrilateral is a polygon with four sides. So just like a triangle has three sides, a quadrilateral has four. And remember, the lateral were meaning sides, and quad meaning four, so a four-sided figure. Right? So when we are talking about quadrilateral, we know that we're talking about a four-sided figure. And a quadrilateral can appear in a lot of different ways. So here's just one example of what a quadrilateral could look like. And we see that we have four sides. We have one, two, three, four. And when we say a polygon, that means that the sides need to be enclosed and there's no curves. So it's all straight lines that there's no curves to it, and our shape has to be completely enclosed. So there's no gaps or openings. All right, so a quadrilateral is just any four-sided figure. But once we start learning about special traits or characteristics, then this quadrilateral starts to be named a little bit more specific. Just like we talked about when a triangle had a right angle, we can refer to it as a right triangle. Well, when quadrilaterals or four-sided figures have special traits or special characteristics, we can now start naming it something more specific. Let's talk about some of the next three types of special quadrilaterals. All right, so these are some special quadrilaterals. So when we have a quadrilateral, if we only have one side or one pair of opposite sides that are parallel, and remember, parallel means that they never touch, and the way that we know that these are parallel are through these little arrows that they put on those sides. So when you see those arrows, that means that they are parallel. So if we have a four-sided figure that has exactly one pair of parallel sides, it is a trapezoid. So if I see a shape like this, where they tell me that these sides are parallel and only that one pair, well, instead of referring to it as a quadrilateral, I can then refer to it more specifically as a trapezoid. So you're going to have to know all of these different characteristics of the different kinds of special parallelograms, or I'm sorry, of quadrilaterals. All right, now the next type of shape that you'll have to know is a parallelogram. And a parallelogram is a quadrilateral, so a four-sided figure that has exactly two pairs, so both sides, both opposite sides, are parallel and congruent. So unlike a trapezoid where we only had one side that were opposite and parallel, in a parallelogram, we have both opposite sides are not only parallel, so you see the two arrows there mean that they're parallel and the one mean that they're parallel, but they're also congruent. So the opposite sides of a parallelogram are not only parallel, but they are also congruent. And then the last one that you guys will need to know is a kite. And a kite is a quadrilateral with two pairs of congruent adjacent sides. So remember, adjacent means that they are next to each other. They share that vertex, and an angle, they share a vertex and a ray. But here, the adjacent sides are the ones that are directly next to each other, and they are congruent. So you see the two tick marks there mean that they're congruent. And these adjacent sides here with the one tick mark means that they are congruent. And then if we were to look at the opposite side, so across the one that they don't touch, they are not congruent. All right, but these are three different kinds of quadrilaterals that you're going to have to be able to identify just based on these traits and characteristics. Now, we learn a little bit more about parallelograms because just like in quadrilaterals, how we have special kinds of four-sided figures that we can give them a specific name, in a parallelogram, we have some very specific and special ones that we can give more specific names in a parallelogram. And let's talk about those now. All right, and then now the last ones that you're going to have to remember is now when we learn about parallelograms, there's going to be special parallelograms that we have. So a rectangle is a parallelogram that has four right angles. So if we see a parallelogram, meaning that opposite sides are congruent and parallel, and then we see that they have four right angles, well, then that means it is a rectangle. And remember, here we see that we have two tick marks. That means those sides are equal. And here we have one tick mark. That means those sides are. But since 2 does not equal 1, it doesn't mean all four sides are equal. All right, and then the next special parallelogram that we'll learn about is a rhombus. And a rhombus is a parallelogram with four congruent sides. So you see here, it doesn't say anything about the angles. So we don't get told anything about the angles, but just that we have four congruent sides. And since they're all one tick mark, that means that they're all congruent. That means that it is a rhombus. And now you see both of these are coming back towards a square. Well, a square has everything that's a rectangle and everything that's a rhombus. So it's four congruent sides and four right angles. So you're going to have to write these down and you're going to have to remember these. So every single kite and parallelogram and trapezoid has all the characteristics of a quadrilateral, meaning that they're all four sides. All right. Once we see that we have one pair of opposite sides of parallel, it is a trapezoid. If we have two pairs of opposite sides that are both parallel and congruent, then it means it is a parallelogram. And then from a parallelogram, we can have a rhombus, which means it's just four congruent sides, a rectangle, which is four right angles, and then when we have both four congruent sides and four right angles, it is a square. And then the last quadrilateral is a kite that has two pairs of congruent adjacent sides. So you must write this down and you must memorize this because you're going to have to be able to identify the different kinds of quadrilaterals. All right, so now for this first problem, we're going to classify the given quadrilaterals. So for A, we need to look and see, well, what are they telling us? So first off, we see it's a four-sided figure. They tell us it is anyway because it's quadrilateral. All four sides are equal. So, and we have four right angles. So that means that the right angles tells me that it is a rectangle, but the four congruent sides tell me it's a rhombus. And when we have both a rhombus and a rectangle, that means that it is a square. All right, now when we go to do the next one, here we see, okay, well, the two sides that are next to each other are congruent. And when we have two pairs of adjacent congruent sides, that means it is a kite. All right, so you're just going to have to be able to look at the figure and identify what shape it is based on the information provided. All right, so now we're going to learn about the second learning objective, which is to solve for missing angles of a quadrilateral. So just like a triangle added up to a certain specific degree, the sum of the angles in a quadrilateral, they all add up to 360 degrees. So if we see here we have our four angles of W, X, Y, and Z, well, we can add all of them together and it will equal 360 degrees. So a triangle added to 180, now a quadrilateral or four-sided figure will add to 360. And it's the exact same thing that we were just doing before with the triangles, but now we're setting them equal to 360. So let's go ahead and do a couple examples, and then that'll be it for this video. All right, so now the question for example 2 says to solve for x. So we look and say, okay, well, where is x and what is x part of? Well, x is an angle of this quadrilateral. So now we have to say, okay, well, we just learned that a quadrilateral adds to 360 degrees. So just like we did with the triangle, we can add all of our angles together. So 115 plus 70 plus 75 plus x, but now we're setting it equal to 360 degrees because that's what a quadrilateral adds up to. All right, so now we can go ahead and solve for or simplify. So 115 plus 70 plus 75 is equal to 260. So now we have 260 plus x is equal to 360. And then our last thing is to isolate and solve for the x. So we'll subtract each side by 260. And now we get that x is equal to 100 degrees. And that will be your final answer for this one. So you see, it's really nothing different from what we're doing with the triangle, except for now it adds to 360 instead of the 180 degrees. All right, so now for the last problem that we're going to do, it also says to solve for x. So once again, we see we have a quadrilateral, so we know that it adds to 360. So we can go ahead and take all of our angles, so 82 plus 105 plus 10x, because that's angle F, plus 8x plus 11, because that's all of angle G, is then equal to 360. Now we're going to combine our like terms. So we have 10x plus 8x, which is an 18x, and 82 plus 105 plus 11 is going to be plus 198, is then equal to 360. So we subtract 198 from each side, and 18x is then equal to 162. And now we're going to divide each side by 18, and x is equal to 9. All right, that is our final answer for this question, and that's the last thing that we're doing on this video.